Jim uploaded a bunch of files, a bunch of Inventor files that I left for you guys to download as a zip file or individually if you wanted to. We don't suggest that you do these along with us tonight. We strongly suggest that you save them. You know, you could use them in your classroom if you want, but they're for you to practice and play with later on so that you can do a bunch of different, you can try a bunch of different things using EdgeCAM. And they're all easy things to do. So those are all there. I don't think we'll get to all of them, but we'd like to get through at least a couple of them. And I'm going to start out and talk a little bit about the interface, tools, post-processors, tool store. I know, Megan, you had some issues. You had some questions about the post-processor. And we'll talk about what that is too. Then we'll get into the two different modes of EdgeCAM, machine mode and design mode, manufacturing mode or design mode, how they work and where some of the major tools are and some of the operations that we can do. And we'd like to kind of get through the basics of facing, drilling, roughing, and profiling today. And again, I'm recording this, and since I'm doing it on my computer, I think we're using just the software. Everything should work just fine. I'm not using a video camera, so I should be able to upload this video sometime the end of this week, the beginning of next week, if all goes well. All right? Okay, so feel free.
And I plan on each one of the tutorials that we have. I plan on trying to do a short video for them. The majority of them are not in the curriculum yet. It's something that we're working on. For the majority, if you look at the curriculum right now, the flange is the file that they have the kids just jump straight into, and it's a little overwhelming for some of the kids that haven't had it. And if you try to sit there and do an entire day's presentation, most of the kids will either not remember it the next day or get a little bit overwhelmed by it. So I kind of break it up into the files that Chris has shared with you, and that way you can do like a 5-minute presentation, then have the kids work and kind of go back and forth. So what we want to try to do in this session and the next session is give you enough of them that by the time we're done doing a couple of these, you should be able to do the flange fairly easily, just like your kids.
Okay, we ready to go? All right. So once you have EdgeCAM installed and it's working, you notice that the interface, it kind of looks like Inventor. They're starting to become very, very similar. And when it first opens, it opens up in design mode. And the way you can tell, you look up here in the corner, you have design mode and manufacture mode. So you have two different modes, and you always design first and then manufacture. So the first thing you want to do is you need a part to work with. So I went to Jim's folder of tutorial files, and you can pick any Inventor file. One way to do it is to say File and choose Open. Another way to do it is to grab it and drag it into the window. And give it a minute, it'll open up your file. And this is a piece of European type software, so if you right-click on your mouse, you'll be able to rotate it in space by right-clicking and holding. That's how you rotate. Everything that we do will show up in our browser window over here. This is going to show us all of our different layers and features. And this is our feedback window over here on the side. Once you've installed EdgeCAM, you should see the windows very similar to the way they're laid out here without moving them all around. The one that we're going to use most and mainly, I'm just going to pull up here, are these ones right here. So the first thing to do is open a part, and here's a part. We're going to do 3 things in design mode. We're going to add stock to it. So for instance, this right here has this part has a whole bunch of geometry on it. And this is a pocket. It's a hole in the center of an object. And we want to machine this pocket out. And the process to do that is called roughing. But the first thing we need to do is add stock to our part. So that would be the first button right here, called stock or fixture. And I'm going to click on that. And I'm just going to say auto stock. I'm going to let EdgeCAM do it automatically for me. And my suggestion for you and your students, first time through, let EdgeCAM EdgeCAM make most of the decisions for you. All right, so it's going to be the shape of a box. Now, some of you who have machining experience, you want your box to be, you want your stock to be larger than the part because you're going to face it down to be precise, be accurate. We're just going to leave it so that there aren't any offsets. We're going to say automatic stock and say OK. Neat thing about, well, it's neat, but it can be a pain too. One feature with EdgeCAM is the fact that it saves most of your mouse clicks. That can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. It's good if you hit the right ones. It's bad if you hit the wrong ones because it remembers them. So if you notice, a green line appeared around the edge of my stock. It's hard probably to see on your screen, but if you look up here, this tells me the name of my part, and this tells me that I have a piece of stock around it. Kids will go, I don't see it. I don't see it. So I'll just, is it there? And you look up here, you have extras. Okay, well, I only need one, so I can right-click on it and say delete. It's pretty much like anything else. And I've got issues with my scroll wheel. There we go. So I've put stock on it, step number one. And if you look at the agenda that I put out, I think, yeah. So for design mode, we import our part. We're going to put stock on it. I forgot to put stock on it. We're going to fix or change the CPL or the PRZ, and then we're going to find the features. Then we're done in design mode. Okay, so let's take a look at design mode and see what we have left to do. We've put some stock on it. We have to create a CPL or fix it. And what CPL is, or PRZ, it's the part reference 0. And we're going to use the corner, the bottom left corner of our material as the part reference 0. So all of our geometry goes from this corner. So that's 0, 0, 0 in space. Does everybody understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, beautiful. So if I look at this, green points in the positive Y direction, red points in the positive X direction, and blue points in the positive Z direction. And if that's what it looks like and it's in the right place, we're all set. There's nothing to do. You don't have to click on this button. If you make this part in Inventor correctly, make it in the first quadrant and extrude it into the screen, that will be there automatically all the time. Well, what if it isn't? Later on, we'll show you how to fix it. The next thing we have to do is find the features. So the next step is finding features. How many features do we see? There's really only one thing on here, and the way Jim designed this, it's awesome. There's only one thing to do on most of these. Some of the complex ones have 2 or 3 things, but this has one pocket, and we want to rough this pocket. So let's let EdgeCAM find our features for us. We're going to use the feature finder. We're going to click on it, and we're going to, let me see, from CPL. I've never had to select that before, but
CPL.
Yeah, I'll take it from my top CPL.
You have to click on CPL.
Okay.
No, you don't. You didn't actually have to select anything there.
Okay.
It was done by default.
So if I just went to here and didn't select anything, let's do this. Let's say edit, undo, and say find features, and say OK. Bam! It just found everything anyway. And if I look up here in my features, I see that I have a 2D boss, and if I hover over it, it turns that feature a different color. So you see the blue boss, that's the outside edge. I can do something to the outside edge if I want. I can do something to the flat face, the surface of that piece if I want. Or I can do something to the 2D pocket that we see right there if I want.
Chris, would you go back to your feature finder real quick?
Sure.
And like Chris said, good things and bad things. Remembers all the stuff that you have. If he goes to the Mill tab, there are some things, as soon as you get the package, there are a whole bunch of these things that are already checked by default. And there's a good majority of them on a regular basis your kids aren't going to need. Like highest wall, they're not going to need. There are no holes for this one, so we could turn those off. One of the biggest ones is down there at the very bottom, that flat faces. And the good majority of the time, we're not going to, even for facing operations, I don't need those. So you kind of want to go through before you have your students do it and kind of figure out what a lot of those are. And the best part is there's a little animation for just about every single one of them. The kids will get confused as they go down there to like 3D Pocket. They think that what they see on the screen right now is a 3D Pocket because of their current understanding of what 3D is. What's on the screen right now is only a 2D Pocket. A 3D Pocket is something that doesn't go just straight down as an extrude. It's something that has some kind of contour or a draft angle or something to it. So if you turn a lot of those off, if it's a very complicated part, it'll take a lot less time for it to interpret the part, and it also won't find a lot of things that you don't want it to find. So you can turn them on, turn them off. The bad part is when you go out of it and come back, next time everything you turned off will be turned off. Everything that you turned on will be turned on every time until you go back and change them again.
Yeah, and for the purpose of these tutorials and something simple for the kids, the way it's set up, it's really okay. Let it find whatever it finds, and then see what happens. You can choose things afterwards. You can change this. You can go back and change this afterwards. It's all changeable. You can add to it. You can subtract from it. But like Jim said, it's once you get comfortable with it, you can move forward, and you just say okay. Boom. So it has those three things. I have done 1, 2, 3. I've used those 3 features in design mode. So I'm pretty much all set in design mode. I'm ready to start manufacturing this. I can start to manufacture this part. So what we're going to do next is switch to manufacture mode. We're going to click on manufacture mode. And here's where it could get a little dicey for people who aren't using in IntelliTech a ProLight machine. What you need to make sure on this tab is that the machine tool you have the machine tool that you own chosen. I have an IntelliTech, so I make sure it says IntelliTech. If you have a Techno mill, you click on Techno. If you have an EMCO, Haas, we don't see some of the ones that you may have on here. What do you do in that case? In that case, you call Project Lead the Way, their technical support, and they will hook you up with a post. They'll tell you where to put it. It goes in a folder, and you put it in the folder. It shows up in this window, and you choose it. If there isn't a post for it, what we want you to do right now for the purposes of simulating this is choose the IntelliTech one so that we can simulate this afterwards. When my students first start this, all I want them to do is choose the machine tool. Done. And make sure that the CPL, the PRZ, the part reference 0 that we want is the top. It's the correct one. And we say OK. It will always remember that now until something happens to this computer. IntelliTech will always be chosen. And what a post processor is a converter that converts the code into the G&M code you need for your particular machine. So if you have an IntelliTech, there are some G&M codes that need to be there or don't need to be there, so it will post the code for your particular machine. That's really what that's all about. So I'm in manufacturing mode. You'll notice that all of my icons have changed. All right, and the two main ones the two main toolbars that I'm going to use are this one and this one. So this is really pretty easy. All I want to do is, Jim, why don't we can do 2 operations, I suppose. We could face this, but I didn't leave any material on the top.
Yeah, but you can change that into facing.
Okay, so why don't we do that? Why don't we just face this? We'll do a face mill operation. We'll actually do 2 operations on this. We'll choose face mill, and it's going to ask us questions right here and give us a pick box. So really all you have to do is answer the questions. Select a closed profile to machine. So I'm going to select the closed profile. I can choose it from over here, or I can choose it down here. I find kids have a hard time choosing things over here. They might get the wrong thing. So if they come up here and choose this flat face and click on it, they're all set. And one thing that students and people new to this will do is they'll sit there and, well, what do I do now? It's all done, right? Well, you have to hit enter or click on the checkbox, and it'll ask you another question. It's like, all right, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to climb mill? Do you want to do step over, lead length, lead radius, blah, 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 blah. and I've got all these different options to choose from. First time through, I tell my kids, don't really mess with anything. Let it do what it's going to do. Step over is if I hover over it, the picture shows me what it does. The picture says step over is the percentage that the tool is actually going to step across the material with. Lead length and radius, we'll talk about that after. All we really want to do right now is choose a tool. Let's go to tooling. Don't change anything up here until you find the tool in the tool store. Because once you find the tool in the tool store, it will change all this information for you. And I think I want to see my end mills. So I'm going to use the biggest tool that I have because I'm doing a facing operation. It happens to be a 3/4 inch end mill, face mill rather. I'm going to select that, and you notice it changed my feed, plunge, and speed rate. And for those of you who've just done all of the speeds and feeds, you'll see all that information here. Plunge feed is half the feed rate. Show you what your spindle speed is. It tells you what the tool number is and what the tool is. Depth. You want to say something, Jim? Did you want to step?
Well, the other thing I was going to say is those numbers that are there, the kids may want to kind of know something about those numbers.
Right.
Realistically, those numbers are designed for prototyping material, and those numbers are designed for the tooling that we currently have. If I was going to do something on aluminum or brass or something like that, those numbers would not be any good. We're not actually having the kids calculate out those numbers. If we had them calculate it for wrench shape, that would be a feed rate of something like 75 inches per minute at a spindle speed of 60,000 RPMs, which our machines can't even do. So those are just safe numbers for you that are actually running a little bit slower than they really need to, just for reaction time, to keep the machine life of your tools, your machine. But the kids don't necessarily have to worry about those numbers. Now, if you're finding that those numbers, if you have a lab volt or a Denford and some of those are a little bit too fast for you, you can start slowing some of those numbers down.
Good point, Jim. Good point. So we've got the tooling. We can go to depth. Now, remember, this was a 3D solid model that you made in Inventor. It takes all the geometry into EdgeCAM. When you bring it into EdgeCAM, it takes all the geometry with it. So it knows how deep this pocket is. It knows everything about the part, but you can go in here and you can change depth if you want. If you wanted to cheat it by bringing it down a little bit. So depth, how deep do we want to go on this? Let's take 1/10 off. If we wanted to do that in 2 cuts, we could tell it what the increment was. Let's just do it in 1 cut because it's a piece of wax or a piece of Ren, and say OK. And if everything comes out well, you'll see that there's some yellow lines that indicate the tool path and a picture of the tool. And if I look at those yellow lines, I look that they have see that they have some depth, and they're cutting about 1/10 of an inch into my part. I can now verify this on this toolbar right here with my rapid result if I wanted. I could also simulate the machining, but let's do rapid result and see what this thing looks like. Just know that when you click on this button, it opens a separate program called the simulator, which is a totally separate program. It's a graphics program separate from EdgeCAM. And when you play it, if you noticed, it went really fast. I sped it up. I turned the speed up. I can rewind it. I can do it again, and it still went really fast. But you can see that the yellow, it actually faced off the top of my part so that it looks the way that I want it to. So when you're done, just make sure that you close this window. If you accidentally click on this and just leave it in the background and open up another window and another window and another window, eventually your desktop will blow up because too many things are running and you lose all your work. So close that window when you're done. At least in my lab, that used to happen all the time. Kids get really good with closing that, and you're all set. So there's our facing operation. Piece of cake, right? At this point, I tell the kids, if you get something to work, save it. File, save it in a folder. Make sure it's saved in the same folder with the part. And we can go on and do the next operation. So the only other operation we're going to do on this part is the roughing operation on the pocket here. So let's find a roughing operation. First one's a hole operation, face milling, roughing. There we go. So we want to rough this pocket. Again, it's going to ask me a question. Select the geometry. I want this 2D pocket. I'm going to go pick it over here. I want my 2D pocket. When I'm done, remember to hit enter. And it asks me another question. Select boundaries. First time through, I tell my kids, let EdgeCAM choose the boundaries. So hit enter again. It'll ask you some more questions. I've changed to optimized so that it cuts both ways. You can choose climb or conventional. We'll talk about that too. But optimized allows it to cut both ways. I'm going to leave my step over at 75%. And again, the depth, the cut increment will be set according to the tool I choose. Level and depth is 0. 0 according to whatever it is from my part. I can cheat it and change it in here if I want, but the only thing I really have to do is choose a tool. Now, because this is a pocket with square corners, you can never, ever, ever have a pocket with square corners because you use a round tool. So if I'm going to hog this out, and I don't care what the radius of those corners are, I'm just going to use my 1/2-inch end mill. So I'm going to choose my 1/2-inch end mill. It puts all my feeds and speeds in there. I say OK. And I see my 1/2-inch end mill, and I can see my tool paths at the right depths of cut. I can then verify it. And I can see that I've got made my pocket in there exactly the way I wanted it to. I can do a whole bunch of other stuff too, but let's, what happens if, oh, Mr. Hurd, I didn't want that depth of cut. I wanted a different depth of cut. How do you edit something? Well, I can choose my tabs in my browser. I can choose my sequence tab, and I can see now that I have my face mill operation and my roughing operation. Let's say I wanted to change the step over of my face mill operation. I can double click on it, say OK, and change the step over. I'm going to change step over to 50% and say OK. Give it a second, and you can see that it actually changed it. It made it smaller. It went from 75% to 50%. So I can edit an operation afterwards by double-clicking on it and saying OK. Or I can right-click on it and say Edit. And for this particular one, depth of cut is 0.1875. If I wanted to, I can change that. Let's do a 1/4-inch cut. And say OK. And I can see the depth of cut, it's changed, and I can go in and verify it again over here. I can check it out, and it'll do everything I need it to. Does anybody have any questions so far? Did I make that look real easy? I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is. It's really not that much harder than that. But you can tweak it and you can change it. You can do anything you want. To all those options that you have on all of these tabs, you can go and you can change the angle of your face milling operation to 45, and it'll change the angle at which it does it. You can get some pretty cool effects by doing that. Is it going to make any difference whatsoever in the part that I'm making here? No, not really. But you can if you want. You have anything?
As a good rule of thumb, typically on most tools you're not going to do more than a 50% step over. And as a good rule of thumb for your cut increment, it's usually about 1/3 of the tool diameter. So if your tool diameter has the 1/2 inch that he's using there, if I divide that by 3, that'll give me pretty much what a max depth of cut should be for each one of those. So the 50% for the most part is the most you're ever going to want to do in your step overs.
Beautiful. Okay, any questions yet? Now remember, you have all these files so that you can do anything you want to them later on. You can pull these out after we're done tonight, and you can try them yourself as well. So let's see, what do we want to try?
Go ahead and click on that folder, Chris. For the most part, when I'm teaching the kids, the very first thing I do is teach them facing.
Mm-hmm.
And in that facing operation, that's where I can show them either offsets. I can show them to just go ahead and take off the material like Chris did there. Then I can go ahead and just kind of go through, just for the matter of fact that it put them in alphabetical order. That's not necessarily the order that I teach them into, but facing is one of the first ones I do. and then I do the roughing one that he has there, and then I start doing the profiling. And for the most part, we've designed some of these specifically to try to help them out with a container when they try to get to that point.
And if your kids if they can work through all of these different things, they're doing all right. They know everything they need to know to make the container or any other one of their projects that they can come up with. There's even one here to show you how to change the CPL, the PRZ, if it's in the wrong place. It shows you how to do that. So let's go back to this and see. Okay, so we've got facing. Yeah.
If you would show my screen real quick.
Sure. Change presenter to, I think, you. There you
go. This is another file that we can go ahead and send to you. This is one that I put together a year or so ago. For the most part, what Chris just did, open the inventor file, auto-select the part. Flow charting is one of the things that they should have learned in IED. Going through the design process is just another application to kind of have them use flow charting. Is the CPL correct? No. Then I need to correct one. Yes, and I use the feature finder and so on. It just gives the kids some options to kind of go through step by step and try to give themselves some decisions on what it is that I'm supposed to do. Go through the operations, go through the general tab, tooling tab, blah, 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 and so on. Is the tool the same as the last tool and what to select and so on. I can give you this flow chart as well that you can kind of give to your kids if it'll help them out a little bit.
I forgot all about that, Jim. That's awesome. Thank you. Excellent. Oh, don't want that. So next operation, everybody all set with facing and roughing? I kind of combined those two. Sorry about that. I didn't even think about that. Question, Tammy?
Nope, I'm okay.
Okay. Drilling. So let's do drilling first. Let's drill some holes. So,
hey Chris, we have a question that says, when you're selecting either facing, roughing, etc., can you clarify on how you know which line to select in the pane on the left hand? I will tell you, Chris, go back to your features tab real quick. One of the things that I show the kids, you can pick the tools directly from the top, but if he hovers over that 2D pocket, go down to, and he right-clicks on it, it'll only have there at the bottom the things that you should be able to do to each one of those. So if I want to profile it, flat land it, face mode, those kinds of things, those are going to be the ones that are there. If he goes all the way up to that 2D boss, right clicks, right there I can grab that face mill operation. Then I don't have to worry about which boundaries I'm going to try to pick and so on. I can just grab it directly from there. And if it's a hole, the only option that's going to be there is hole. If it's a profile, the only option that's going to be there is to rough it or to profile it. So it kind of gives them a little bit of a limited selection. Instead of having all 9, 10 tools, whatever, they only get a couple of tools that would be appropriate to do that operation.
Excellent. That's a great point. Notice too that there are always more than one way to do something. That's the easiest way, and I was going to save that for this one. So using these menus up here is one way to do it. Using them on the right-click menu over here is the other way to do it. Like Jim just said, that's excellent. So let's use that when we do our drilling. So let's do a drilling operation on the one with all the holes. So we'll pull this one in.
That part is you can only have one EdgeCAM file open at a time.
Right, right. So I check and I make sure, number one, I'm in design mode. I make sure my PRZ is correct. I stock my part. My PRZ is correct. The arrows are pointing in the right direction. I can find my features here. Just say OK. And notice it put points on every single one of these. And also, if I choose, let me just go back to Feature Finder for just 1 second.
I will tell you, because Chris has had this set up before, his just worked. Yours would not for this file.
Right.
Unfortunately, because EdgeCAM is a European company, they're going to be set up by millimeters, and I don't know why it doesn't try to translate it for us, but when he goes over to mil, where it says right now maximum diameter, he has changed that, and their maximum diameter is going to be something like
40.
Yeah, 40 or something like that, and it's supposed to be 40 millimeters. What you're saying is anything that is over, what he says right now, anything that's over a half an inch, it's not a hole, I'm not going to drill it, I'm going to pocket it instead. So what you're allowing it to do right now is interpret and see what we're going to classify as a hole and what we're not going to classify as a hole.
So if the biggest tool you own is a half-inch end mill, then I set mine for a half inch because I can't really drill anything larger than a half an inch. I'm going to have to use it as make it a pocket and rough it. So good point. So I had already made mine 0.5, so it saw all of those as holes. And again, it shows me my 2D boss, my blind hole. Once a kid gets a complex part and they're doing some complex geometry, this will find all kinds of stuff. And if they find that there's something that they don't need, you can get rid of it. You can rename them, but let's just mess with the blind holes. We've done 1, 2, 3. We're done in design mode.
We also had the box on that said group similar holes, so it has found those basically as one feature rather than find it as 12 separate features.
Right, which makes it really easy because then there's only, and let me show you where that is just real quick. And again, that was, let's see, group, where'd it go? Hole options, find all holes.
Straight over to the right.
Diameter.
Group similar holes. And if that's checked and you say 0.5, it'll do them all at once, and you won't have to do them all separate. And we're set to go to manufacture mode. And again, I get this box, and I ask my kids, you're going to use the same machine. You check and make sure it's the right post. You check and make sure that it's the initial, the CPL is correct, and you say, okay. You're in manufacture mode. We can go to blind holes. If we right-click on it, there's only a couple things we can do. We can do a hole operation for milling, which means we're going to mill it with an end mill and not a drill, and a threading operation. We obviously want the hole. Okay, so we get, again, a whole bunch of information. Blind. A blind hole means a hole that ends in the middle of the material. So it's a blind hole. Center or spot. We're not going to do any center or spot drilling. Prep. We're not going to do any prep. Let's just rough these holes and be done with them. Okay, we're just going to rough out the holes and be done with it. Is this the proper way to machine a precise hole on a piece of stainless steel in a machine shop? No. Will it work on a piece of Ren in our lab? Yes. So let's just say roughing, drill, and again, the only thing I'm going to change is the tool.
Now it is going to pop up with an error because right now it is looking for a drill bit, and we have not installed any drill bits.
Right.
So the kids will pop this up and they're going to say, well, I got to go make a new tool, and they shouldn't have to. If they say no to that, the tab that's going to come up is going to say, I have no tool. So this is where you have to teach them to change their filters. Once they change their filter to end mills, there's only going to be one there that's possible. All the rest of them are going to disappear because I can't do it with anything but the 1/4 inch end mill.
So then I select my 1/4 inch end mill. It changes my speeds and feeds. I say OK. And then when I go into check it and see if it's going to work, bam, machines all of them, every one after the other.
Chris, can you slow your simulation down? That's what I want to show them. Go ahead.
Well, I can try. That's about
a
it.
second.
So what he needs to do is he needs to go to the little gear and wrench.
Right there.
And we're going to go into your speed options. And we're going to change the minimum steps per frame. Instead of the 0.5, we can change that to something like 0.05. And then change your inches from 0.02 to like 0.001 or something.
Which one?
I don't know why it gives you both options. So you're going to have to, that just changed your millimeters. Now you're going to change your inches. So change it to like 2000s, 0.002 or something. The kids will have to do that by default, or every time they hit play, even when they've completely slowed it down, it'll never be slow. So you just rewind it, and then when you play it again, there you go.
There we go. So it drilled all my holes. And
what you'll really see on your screens at home, it's just kind of popping up fast here on your screens at home, as you start changing those, you'll actually see the drill come over from a tool change, and it'll come over to the part, and it'll start doing it. The worst part about EdgeCAM is EdgeCAM will not show it in real time. CNC Motion will, but EdgeCAM will not.
right. For just so that you know, for drilling, a couple of the options that you can choose, chip break and peck drilling. Kids will ask, what are these? Well, peck drilling, it basically, like a bird, it'll peck at the hole to break the chips and pull them out. So if you choose peck drilling and you say, okay, what will that do? And you can take a look at it.
The one that IntelliTech machines cannot understand the code for chip break.
Right.
It'll put in a G code that it doesn't understand or can't interpret. You may have to change your millimeter too. I don't know why. Because that should be more than slow enough.
Well, it's because it's a Mac, Jim, and Macs are so fast. Oh, boy. Well, sorry, guys, that's about as slow as I'm going to get. But like Jim said, you can actually see the tool come over and drill the holes. It's really pretty neat. It lets the kids see what's going on.
Try to change the frame.
When
setting the frame. Try to change the frame. You must slow it down. Yeah. That's good, I think.
No, that shouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, it's all good.
If you would, when you close that box, go ahead and go to Verify. Your drop-down tab. And go down to Cycle Time. Once you have verified it, you can go to Cycle Time. You'll see that all the way down in the bottom left-hand corner. It thinks right now it's going to take 2 minutes and 49 seconds to be able to run that part. What you'll find is when you go into CNC Motion, for the most part, those two will be something fairly similar to each other.
Yep, and that doesn't take into account for tool changes and stuff. So anybody have any questions about holes?
Nope.
Holes are pretty simple. Okay, and the last one for today, it's 5:45. We'll do one more, and then we'll let you call them up and play with some. Let's do profiling operation. So here is a profile. And basically the way to define a profile for kids is you're dragging a tool around a line. So roughing is hollowing out inside of a line, staying inside of a line. Profiling is just dragging a tool around a line. That's the difference between the two. So again, it's these three tools. Put a piece.
I kind of compare it to my kids as far as like landscaping. When they're doing a roughing operation, they're cutting the grass. So they have to think about I have to go back and forth to hollow out an area. When they're doing profiling, it's their weed eating. They're going around and they're trimming everything up that's around the outside border. I would never use a weed eater to go clear out an entire area. So you want to try to use the right tools too.
Excellent. And my CPL is correct. I don't have to do anything. Find my features. Say OK. I've got my 2D boss on the outside edge. I've got the 2D boss on the inside of my profile, and they've called that a pocket also. So let's say I wanted to use a 16-inch end mill for whatever reason. I could call that a pocket if I had a really small tool. You don't want to do that. You'll break the tool. So let's just drag a tool the right size around this boss right here. So let's choose got to remember I have to go into manufacture mode.
And that's why if you look at the name of this file, the name of this file is profiling inside or out. They can either profile the pocket or they can profile the island.
Right, right. You can choose either one and you'll get the same outcome. Make sure my machine tool's right, my CPL's correct. And go to my features. I can click on the inside boss if I wanted to and do a profile operation. I'm going to let EdgeCAM pick my boundaries by hitting return. I'm going to choose my tool and I'm going to use my 1/8 inch end mill. You know what? Let's use my ball end mill because we haven't used one yet. Let's see what happens. And if you notice, you can see in my, I'm going to have issues scrolling, but you see the lines, the red line, that's where the tool goes around. That's the tool path. So let's try it and see what it looks like. Boom, done. Made it in a couple passes. You can see, and if you look at it with the ball end mill, the depth, it's rounded in the bottom. Oh, I picked the wrong tool, Mr. Hurd. How do I change that? Yeah.
Chris, once you go ahead and go back to where you were and do a comparison so they can see that it didn't produce it correctly.
Say that again?
So go back to your verify.
Gotcha.
No, your actual simulator. Go ahead and play it, and then click on your red and green one. What that will do is that's going to compare the inventor file and compare the EdgeCAM file, and it's going to show you what's different. Anything that's blue is stuff that it did not do correctly. Anything that's red is stuff that it did too much to. You'll really want to do that when the kids are doing their containers.
Right.
They'll have to do with two pieces that are supposed to fit together, and if they don't have it machined exactly the way it's supposed to be designed, then the two won't go together.
Right. So if you get to the point where, let's say, for instance, you've done this profiling operation, you don't like the fact that it's a ball end mill, you can go in very easily, go to tooling, change the tool, make sure your end mills are showing. And choose the proper tool, say OK, and it'll do it again for you. And you're all set. Anybody have any questions? Well, beautiful. I think we're going to stop there for tonight in terms of new stuff in EdgeCAM. Do you have any questions on how to do something?
Chris, did you want to go ahead and show them how to change the CPL just in case when you do their flames it's not correct?
You bet. So why don't we do this? So we'll go one step ahead. We'll pick a part. I saw the incorrect CPL. So student makes a part in Inventor.
And hopefully you can also see the color coding that you do in Inventor will also carry over in EdgeCAM. So when I bring this part up, I will tell them which colors I want to be the front faces and how I want it to be set up, and then they have to try to produce it that way.
Okay. I don't see a CPL on this one.
It's not. It's inside the part.
Yes, it's in, if I take a look, it's somewhere. It's probably somewhere inside my part. So it's not where I want it to be. So let's say, for instance, I can choose now. I want to put it right here on this corner with a positive Y this way, positive X this way, positive Z going up in the air. So auto stock it. Create a CPL. I tell my students to always name it new so that I can find it, because then just move the origin with it. I'm going to choose to do this through 3 points. If that doesn't work, you can choose face normal or face axis. You want to do a different one first, Jim? Does anybody care which one? Let's do.
Just lose you, Chris?
No. Am I here? Let's do through 3 points.
Hello?
Can everybody hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Hello, 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 hello. Microphone, microphone, microphone. Microphone, hello. Hello? Are you kidding me, really? Are you kidding me? Alright, well anyway, so I'm going to choose through 3 points. And then I'm going to choose where I want it. Make sure there's a red box. End of the positive X. End of the positive Y. And the origin. And hello, I'm back. I'm back. I don't know what happened. Everybody with me? That was weird.
Yeah.
So did everybody see that? I tried to do a Vanna White and just kind of point at it. Did everybody see me pointing at the screen?
No, not at all.
It just stopped.
You look pretty. You do look pretty.
Perfect. So here's what.
So try that again.
Yeah, let's do that again now that you can hear it. Create a CPL. I'm going to call it new, so I know what it is. I'm going to move the origin with it. I'm going to try through 3 points, and when I do through 3 points, I tell the kids I have to choose. Make sure the red box shows up. I choose where I want the CPL, the end of the positive X, the end of the positive Y, and choose the CPL again. In the order of operations, it's a counterclockwise right triangle. And that's how I get the kids to remember it.
And some of the kids may have a hard time. Chris can never zoom in on it, but if you look at his very top right corner of that, it's going to be hard for you to see, but there's these little tiny whiskers that are hanging over. They can really be a pain in the butt. We don't know what causes them. I don't know what is there. But every once in a while, the kids will pick one of those, and it doesn't matter how much you zoom in, they never get any bigger.
Right.
If they accidentally pick one of them, it will tweak the CPL, and it will set it at some funky little angle. So sometimes it's better if you can click on midpoints, and instead of getting the little boxes, you get these little X's.
Great. And I lost my pan too. You guys are killing me. Okay. Let's do this again. We'll be fine. We'll kill it.
Again.
Yeah, try it again. You guys just want me to do this a couple times, don't you? Okay, so
I didn't see it the first time. Can you do that again?
17 times later. And the kids won't remember this first time either. Origin. Through 3 points. This time, let's say I want it right here. I want it in this corner. Then I can choose this, the end of the positive X, the end of the positive Y, and back on the origin. Done. And if the origin's there and I want to move it, I can change it. I can rotate this around. I can put it over here. Sometimes, like if I wanted to move this and put it right here, it makes it, EdgeCAM's finicky about how to pick corners like that, and it might have a hard time moving it to here. So I just have to be smarter than EdgeCAM and say, well, if I put it here, it'd be the same as putting it over here, wouldn't it? Just rotate this whole thing around. Okay. So then I could just take it from there and move it over here, and it would do it rather easily. I just tell the kids, if you try it and it doesn't work, try it one more time. If that doesn't work, try something else.
And that's why your order of operations is so important. You need to do that auto stock first, especially if you're going to add stock. If you're going to add stock in the positive Z so that you can do a facing operation, you add the stock, get the positive Z, and then you're going to have to move the CPL anyways. So being able to move the CPL, even if you drew it right in Inventor, it doesn't mean that it's not commonly going to have to be moved.
Right.
If you do the container the way that Chris and I will show you how to do the container, you're going to have to flip it over anyways because you're going to have stuff on the bottom of the part. So knowing how to do the CPL is going to be pretty well essential to kids that do them wrong in Inventor, times when you need to flip it, and then times when you want to move it because you want to move the origin for an offset.
Yeah, and one other, let's see if I can, Jim's probably already done it correctly on this one. But here's, if you see how that PRZ is up in the sky, that's because if you do your stock first, you always do your stock first so that you have some place to put it. Because remember, that's zero. Zero is the top edge of this. So that's why, like Jim said, it's very important to make sure you do your stock first and then create yours. Because if you don't, that's going to end up down here on the corner at an angle. And it's not going to work very well. All right? Beautiful. Well, with that being said, if anybody have any questions on any of those operations that we did today?
Chris, I don't have any questions on the operations. Our issue right now is we had to update our license right at the end of December.
Okay.
And the tech guy installed it, but he wasn't sure exactly he installed it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having trouble having it open the files, the IPT files. I've been to your website and printed out several things, but I may have to communicate with you later somehow.
Nope. Here's your answer right here, Glenn.
Okay.
877-335.7589. I do not install it in my classroom. My tech installs it, and the hardest part is the licensing issue. And the guys at tech support are really good with figuring out what it is.